The iPad Air 2 was released in 2014 along with the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. It was even thinner than the previous iPad and featured Touch ID for the first time. Released with iOS 8, the iPad Air 2 has great performance and even still does on the iPad OS. Hey guys, I'm Ethan from Alumni Tech 47, and today we are going to see if the iPad Air 2 is still usable in 2020. To start off, spoiler, yes, it is still very usable in 2020. And before we get into that, I would like to say that you guys are so awesome in supporting my channel, and I hope to get more subscribers. I am striving to improve in each video and to make every video as best as I can possibly make it. I have been asked if I have a Discord account. I do, but it is unfinished and I don't really know how to set up a Discord server the way I want it with the bots and rules. So that may come in the future, but for now, you should go follow me on Twitter and Instagram at AlumniTech47. I'll link my accounts down below so that you can check me out. Now back to the video. So the iPad Air 2. It's kind of a window into what the iPads are like today and a window into what iPads used to be. When Apple announced this iPad, there was no Apple Pencil in the market, so you have to just go about using a stylus or your finger. So this iPad doesn't have Apple Pencil support at all. Also, Touch ID was released a year before the iPad Air 2, so they put it on the iPad only so that you can use biometrics to get in. As you can see, the iPad Air 2 is really thin, almost too thin. It is only 6.1 millimeters thick, where the last year's iPad Air was 7.5 millimeters thick. They decreased the thickness by 1.4 millimeters, but they also made this iPad faster. You now have the Apple A8X chipset inside as well as 2 GB of RAM now. And that is why the iPad Air 2 is still supported on the latest version of iPadOS, but I think it won't get iPadOS 14 because it has an A8X. I was surprised that the Air 2 would even get iPadOS because the A8 chip isn't supported anymore. So I was asking myself, does that mean that they don't support the A8X chip? Well, Apple thought differently. Now the thing that was decreased on this iPad was the battery capacity. The iPad Air 2 only has a 7340 mAh battery, where last year's Air has an 8820 mAh, and they did that because of the thin size, but it's still a great battery until you've used it for a few years. Apple also introduced iOS 8, and it was a minor update that really just patched things that iOS 7 had made the user's experience slower than usual. Moving on to the more mediocre specs of this machine, you have the same 9.7-inch 1536 by 2048 resolution display. But since this iPad is thinner, the glass is now glued to the display, which means that if you crack this iPad, you have to replace the whole screen rather than just the glass. The speaker on this thing is a little quiet because it has to be a little bit smaller because of the small size, but it works for its job. It's too bad that the speaker is on only one side of the iPad, as they now have speakers on all sides in the current iPads. On top of the iPad, you see that the ringer switch is missing from this iPad. Also, the microphones of this iPad are all around the rear camera. That is probably so that you can get a little surround audio from recording, as well as better audio detection when watching a video that was filmed on this iPad. Now that we are talking about the cameras of this iPad, let's go through them. The rear is now an 8 megapixel camera from the previous 5 megapixel camera on the last Air, but you still have no optical image stabilization. The front-facing camera is still a 1.2 megapixel camera, but the f-stop is now 2.2, which I guess the last iPad didn't have on its front-facing camera. The rear-facing camera can record up to 1080p at 30 frames, as well as slow-mo at 120 frames per second. The front-facing only does 720p at 30 frames per second. As always, I will show you the pictures and videos from both cameras right now. The next thing I want to talk about this iPad is the iPad that you have seen throughout the video. This iPad is mainly used by me, but my father technically owns it. He bought it when it came out in late 2014 from his work. He upgraded from the iPad 2, which he gave to my sister around that time. He got it running iOS 8 and used it for a few years. He loved to use this iPad for his work as well as on the go for work since it has cellular connectivity. This iPad currently doesn't have a service carrier on it right now and just acts as a Wi-Fi only iPad right now. So a few years ago, I think my dad gave this iPad to someone to use temporarily, and she put her account on it until we got it back. The reason we got back the iPad is because she got fired by my dad. So we had an iPad with an activation lock on her work account that she didn't work for anymore. So after a few months, we tried to search down the email address to find her so that she can remove the account from her work account. Eventually, we worked it out and we got it unlocked. My dad then put his account on there and used it for about a few months. A year later, which is now last year to put it into perspective, I found the iPad and told my dad if I could put my account on it so that I can use it. He agreed and erased the iPad and signed out of the iPad. I then put my account on it, and that is where the iPad remains almost 1 year later. So I have technically been using this iPad for about a year and I love it. I have been thinking a little bit about upgrading, but I don't really need an iPad that bad. So I can totally live with this iPad as it's everything I need at convenience. It runs the latest version of iOS and runs fast and efficiently. You could pick up this iPad on the internet starting at just $100. This iPad I have here is a 32GB cellular version. It's probably more or less around $175. So it's an awesome iPad for an awesome price, and it's not like you're carrying around an iPad that is really old either. Apple has kept this exact design around since they released this iPad. The budget iPad that they sell now still has the great slim design, although the current iPads have Apple Pencil support as well as a better processor, more RAM, as well as a second generation Touch ID. But if you don't really care about those features, then this iPad is perfect for you. It really is for me, and I still use it. That's it for this video. If you like this video, go check out the other iPad video that I did on my iPad mini. I do go a little fast on that video, but people seem to like it, and that makes me happy. Make sure that you like this video, and please consider subscribing. I care about each and every one of you, and thank you for taking the time to view my channel. Also, if you are subscribed, turn on that bell icon so that you don't miss a single video. Also, go check me out on Instagram and Twitter at AlumniTech47 so I can follow you back. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.